This meeting come to order. Today is Tuesday, September 26, 2017. This is a study session of the Prescott City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Oberg.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lamerson.
Here.
Councilman Blair.
Here.
Councilman Lazell.
Here.
Councilwoman Orr.
Here.
Councilman Shiska.
Here.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody coming out to listen to what we have to say today on our two subject items. One on presentation by Public Works on capital improvement program, and also whether or not we're going to stand up a city traffic committee. So I think I'll have both of these open to the public for comment. Item A, please.
Item A, presentation by Public Works on the status of the capital improvement program.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Henry Hash, Public Works. We are here today to give you an update on our CIP projects. Just right here. Thank you. Okay, this year, in our budget process, Council approved our CIP projects, 68 projects total. So 58 projects are in progress that we started the first 3 months of this year, July, August, and September. Of the budget update is 36.8% of the money has been either expended or encumbered year to date. That's as of yesterday, I believe. Comparison to last two fiscal years, 17 and 16, by this time we had 25% in 17 and 28.6% encumbered in year 2016. The summary again, committed and expense year to date, $23 million. And construction projects to be bid by the end of this calendar year is about $16+ million. Design projects to be completed the next 6 months, and then other projects by the end of this fiscal year, FY18, $12,500,000, which is a total of about $55 million, which is 88% of the approved budget by the council. There were some projects that were delayed after the council approved our budget due to some funding limitations. These projects, staff had talked, we have had community meetings, and we had told people that the project is going to be done in certain years. However, there are some delays. But on top, the Penn Eastwood been delayed by 3 years, Carlton and Larkin reconstruction by 1 year, North Washington reconstruction 1 year, Summit Beach, 3 years, Goodwin reconstruction, 1 year. South Washington, it is not in our funded list, but we're going to talk some more about this in a couple of minutes. Of these projects that have been delayed, actually 3 of them are already in the CMAR program that you approved the concept a couple of meetings ago. These are the CMAR projects, the list. Willis Cortez, Bashford Court, Summit Beach, in the last slide, Goodwin reconstruction, Carlton and Larkin, and Cortez Street reconstruction. So 3 of those 5 or those 4 are in the works as part of the CMAR project element. If council decides that to bring South Washington to the funded list, we have worked and we have some options to come up with money about $5 million+. We have taken about $1 million from each year, pavement press from I believe 2020 and 21 FY. The same goes for the rest on the sidewalk improvement program. We're taking $600,000, miscellaneous street project $600,000. The program for unpaved street to take care of them, but if you take that money away, 300,000, intersections signalization, that's 440,000. West Gurley, the enhancement project, $500,000. We can incorporate that project with Gurley Street project when that comes up. So that 500,000 can be taken away. And the design of Gurley Street reconstruction, so 650 altogether, that's about 5 million that we can potentially bring South Washington project up if that is the direction you give us. I think this is the end of our presentation. We'll be happy. I'm here, Mr. Steve Oros, to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I've got a couple. Tell me what a miscellaneous streets project is.
These are the projects that we don't necessarily plan for, but they come as a result of something being found either by our residents or yourself, or the issues that we just didn't plan for it, and then we need to have money to take care of it because of the liability issues and many other.
So this is a reserve for unanticipated issues, is that what you're telling me?
You can say that, yes, sir.
Okay, unpaved streets program, what is that?
We still have some streets in the city that they are unpaved. We were planning to actually go and pave them.
Was South Washington and East Goodwin paved?
They are paved.
So I'm not sure I understand why we're talking about unpaved streets program on streets that are already paved, unless you're talking alleys or something like that.
Not sure if I understand the
Well,
question.
We're talking South Washington, East Goodwin
Right.
reconstruction project.
Yes.
And to my knowledge, those are fully paved.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess what I don't understand is, why do we need an unpaved streets program on streets that are paved? There might be streets in
No,
town that are unpaved.
These are not for streets that are paved. The unpaved program, the budget is for streets that are not paved.
Okay, but these are paved, so why is it in here?
They're still in the
Those
money.
are
Taking money
paved
from
because
They're still in the money from the unpaved street program to
Yeah.
put in here.
Mayor, over the
So
five-year
that's where the money's
CIP,
coming from.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's where the
Okay,
money's coming
I'm
from.
with you now.
he's pulling money from these pots in order to faster track South Washington.
Okay, now I'm with you. Okay. So right now, what's the distance of South Goodwin or East Goodwin and South Washington? What's the total? Is that a quarter mile, half mile? Do you have any idea?
I'm not sure. Steve, do you know? 5 to 6 blocks total.
5, 6 blocks?
Yes.
So that's maybe a mile? Not quite a mile?
Probably not quite a mile.
Because I think right now I saw back here where you talked about Penn Eastwood reconstruction. Somebody told me that Penn Avenue right now is about 6 million, is that correct?
I think so. That's about right. Right, Steve? Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a suggestion that sort of goes along with this whole presentation? I think there'd be value for us getting in a van as a council and as the manager and the public works director and looking at some of these projects and looking at how much money is allocated for some of these, because Penn, you alluded to, it's about 0.8 of a mile, but because of the size and scope of the project Public Works is proposing, you're spending $6 million. You really want to, I think you want to know exactly what you're getting for that, and an understanding, physically looking at it might make some sense. It's just a suggestion.
Right. And I think if we've promised work to be done on streets that were in the 5-year plan and they were moved out of the 5-year plan, we definitely need to take a look at those. And
I agree.
as far as I'm concerned, if we promise people, we need to bring them back into the 5-year
I
plan.
am totally on the same page with you. You cannot go out and promise the public something and move the goal line without a really good reason. So.
Okay. Councilwoman Orr.
Thank you, Mayor. I went over on Saturday to Washington and Penn, and there's no doubt that they need to be done as soon as possible. But Henry, I don't understand why in fiscal year 16, the project for Washington, South Washington and Goodwin was $2.5 million. And then FY17, it was 3.8, and FY18, it's $6 million. And there's no difference in the description between 17 and 18, and the price almost doubled. So what's in there that's not, why the difference?
Good question, Councilwoman Oda. I will ask Steve to give you more details. But when we started the project, we have a concept in mind. As design gets more completed, like 30%, they go out on the field and they do a lot of investigation and they talk to a lot of people and they find more. Maybe there is a drainage problem. If there is a water issue, water main need to be replaced, sewer main need to be replaced. When we have the community meeting, the intent is to be transparent, work with people, let them know what we are doing, but more importantly, ask them if there have been any issues in their road that they know in the last year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. And more often than not, they bring us good, valuable information that we didn't probably know about it. You know, there is flooding in there. So many homes were flooded 7 or 10 years ago. And then we look into that. The design is revised a little bit to make sure everything is taken into consideration when we do the project. Your direction as council has been to us to make sure you do it right, do it once, so we don't go back 2 years, 3 years to replace the old water main that we should have done. This is how it came up, and this is why. And this is really true for many other projects.
Double, that's quite, well, not quite, but almost double. From 3.8 to 6 million to drainage.
The drainage is a good part of it.
Well, I certainly agree with the mayor. This was, and it appears that this was pretty much promised to the people that live there, and I definitely feel that we need to live up to our word on that. And I think that the South Washington, after driving that and Penn, both of those need to move up. Up, like to the top of the list, if possible.
We agree. That's why we looked into this to come up with money. I just want to make something clear. It's not that we promised without any, because the money situation changed. You know, in the perception there money available to do these, but during the budget process we found out it's a good problem in some ways that since we have been delivering projects, the money has been expended. That hasn't necessarily been the case in previous years. So we thought the money would be available, but then we found out it isn't. So we had some money short for the projects that we had programmed, and they needed to be cut or delayed, and these are the ones that we talked about. But we're going to work.
So can this be part of the CMAR project as well as what we've already talked about it in August?
It could. It appears that Mr. Hash is looking to take money over a 5-year period of time to come up with this. So if you were going to add this to the CMAR and do it immediately, they would have to go back to the drawing board and find a way to fast track this. But if that's your direction, I think that that's perfectly reasonable and something you can consider.
That's a pretty big CMAR. I mean, is that?
Yeah, it is. We actually have a couple of other CMAR projects, but the 5 or the 6 projects that you approved and directed us to move that direction a couple of meetings ago, they're mostly downtown projects.
Right.
This wouldn't necessarily be part of that, but it could be a separate CMAR project. CMAR projects and program is good, but it doesn't necessarily, you know, apply to everything.
So it could be a separate CMAR
It could,
project,
but
is what
I
you're
would,
saying.
I guess,
could
beg the
be.
difference. South Washington is a downtown project as well,
That
isn't
seems
it?
pretty
In some
Close, you know, but those
Pretty-
are really
pretty
in the heart
close.
of downtown, yes, the other ones.
And when I drove Penn, does Penn go up
Yes, it
and
does.
kind of that curve and, okay,
Turns into another street.
yeah, okay. It looked at, but I wasn't sure because the signs weren't quite complete.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Councilman Blair?
Well, the problem I have with this is I don't get a chance to see the scope of work of what's proposed for that road surface. Number one, is it full-blown curb, gutter, sidewalk on both sides of the road? What does it include? from my standpoint, every single one of these that we're taking out are just as important as that project. So the question becomes is it necessary to do the underground, or do we just think it is? And how long has the underground been there? What's this, how many years? Is it curb gutter on both sides, or can we go back and just do the hard top, the surface, and improve the drainage to cut the cost of the overall project and leave these intact? When you start taking away, the sidewalk improvement program and the intersection signalized program, all these programs, it affects how the city functions. So I think we need to look a little bit more in depth of what those projects call out. I wish I would have looked a little bit more in depth what Union Street, or excuse me, Alarcon Street had called out, because I'm not sure I would have agreed with spending that kind of money on what we did and then end up with the situation we have today. So I think that there's more that I need to see as a councilman before I would agree to any of these things.
Councilman Blair, the bottom of the slides is the evaluate cost reduction opportunities, and this is what we have planned to look at all of these projects again. The answer, is it necessary to replace the water main and sewer main? We only added, I asked the same question myself with every project. If I'm told that this water line probably would last us another 10, 15 years, we may not include it. But if you say we have had so many breaks in the last 2, 3 years and we're going to continue, we don't want to open a new road after 7, 8, 10 months, then it is added. The same thing with sewer lines. Sometimes the sewer lines, the capacity needs to be addressed as well.
That's my exact point. In that whole area, the development's pretty much there. You're not adding a whole lot of new development. So is it a capacity issue? Is it an age issue? Is it an issue where we can live with that for another 10 years until it comes time to resurface this road again? Do we have to do all the bells and whistles at one time, especially when we're taking away from other programs?
Good points, and we're going to look into all of that, yes.
Councilman Blair, I also think that begs what I said earlier about a field trip, that we need to go out and physically look at these to see what the scope you think is appropriate for some of these projects. Because you're right, in some of these instances, these roads have existed the way they are for a very long time.
Well, it's
And in every case, you'd like to buy the Cadillac, but sometimes you have to get by with the Honda.
Well, it's like Shalimar. I mean, it's been without sidewalks on both sides since creation of it. And now to go in there and put sidewalks and all the bells and whistles, it's going to cost a fortune. So the question is it rough enough to have resurfacing on it, and then just call it done? If that's what the real problem is, and if it's really kind of drainage, let's fix the drainage and the pavement and move forward.
Councilman Shiska.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. Henry, the problem I have is that, okay, we've delayed Penn Eastwood, we've delayed Carlton and Larkin, we've delayed North Washington. We promised people we would do those in public meetings. That's a huge problem for me. How long should people be expected to wait once we've gotten the process going? And then did we get back to them in neighborhood meetings to say, well, gee, guys, my bad, we're not going to be able to do it for a while?
We did. In some of the public informational meeting, we did tell people that, yes, we committed this before, but this is going to be delayed because of budget limitation. Just want this budget limitation. This is not something we did wrong. We get only so much money, and you can only do so many projects. When I add one, you need to take one off. Just that's the simple fact. So some of them, as far as I know we had. In fact, I was at that meeting, and the people were not necessarily happy. I understand that. We are also very bothered by the fact that these statements were made, and now we say that it needs to be delayed. So they're all still in the funded program, the 5-year, except South Washington. I believe we have come up with some solution for that. And to Mr. Blair's point, we're going to reevaluate and re-engineer, make sure that what we are going to do is absolutely what is necessary at this point. But these things can be complicated. One adds to another, and that's how it comes to big number. But we will be looking to all of them.
So how long should people be expected to wait? once we have a public meeting and say we're starting this project?
We already told them, I think, in one of the, I don't know, here, if you look, this is how long told that the project has been delayed. Penn Eastwood been delayed for 3 years. Carlton.
I didn't say that, Henry. I said, how long should people be expected to wait once we have a public meeting? What is the process? How long does the process take, or should it take?
When we have a public informational meeting, we give them an approximate time frame that the design will be completed, project be going out to bid, construction will be starting. For all of these projects, there's 3 years, because so it's 3 years delayed from the time that we told them this project will start. And because of the budget situation, we needed to cut $14 million off the projects, and they were delayed. But the 1 year, but again, out of these projects, 3 of them are in the Seymour projects that is in progress. It's going on right now as we speak. In fact, we have advertised 2 Sundays ago, so it's in the works.
Henry, I wasn't here for 16 or 17 when the commitments specifically on South Washington were made. Was there budget constraints at that time that didn't allow you to do the project?
No budget constraints that we believe there is at that time.
Okay, so saying that there was budget constraints at that time is really not accurate. We just didn't get to the project.
No, sir. At that point, we did not believe that there is money issues. We found about that earlier this calendar year. We would not promise people to do a project if we think we cannot do it.
No, my point was, at the time the commitment was made, there wasn't a constraint financially.
That's
we just
correct.
didn't deliver on the project.
That's correct.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Mayor. I found that conversation, Mr. Lamar, pretty interesting. Very similar to Councilman Blair. You know, and I appreciate your sensitivity to budget limitations, okay? I appreciate your sensitivity to needs, not wants. And, you know, I'm very similar to Blair. I have problems when we keep bringing projects with bells and whistles rather than the basics that need to be done. If we have budget limitations, we've got problems all over town. We got road issues all over town. We have drainage issues all over town. Let's take care of the necessities and stop playing with the bells and whistles. I don't know how else plainer to put it.
Mayor Pro Tem Emerson, I hear you, but I can assure you there are no bells and whistles in any of these projects. I think what comes up is 4, 5, 8 million. It's a lot of money. Road construction is expensive. We are doing the basic that we think it is necessary to be done. We are not doing extras. We are not, only if there is a safety concern, and I know you have always concern for safety issues. If there is flooding problem, that we take care of it. If it's old utilities, we are an old city, we take care of it. This is no fanciness. We are just simply buying a Ford Escort or something, just to make us last long.
So I'm hearing from you, no more beautification projects like we had on Alarcon. Is that what I'm hearing? I mean, Henry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I understand.
But we're in a community, an aging community with infrastructure issues, but it's all over town. It's not one here and one here and one here. It's all over. So it's my humbled opinion, we would be far better off for the residents, taxpayers of the city of Prescott to pay attention to the necessity, not the foo-foo. So that's my point.
We agree.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
Thank you. I have a few points. When the streets and open space sales tax was about to expire, you brought to the council a list of deferred maintenance in the city, and it was about $80 million, as I recall. And the reason we have such deferred maintenance problems is the council has not wanted to spend the money or deal with the aging infrastructure. The taxpayers haven't wanted to deal with it. You also brought to us the question of the historic district. And I distinctly remember the council telling you, yes, put a priority on the historic district of Prescott because it is our economic heart. That's what we need to keep it beating in order to draw tourists here and keep them happy. You also brought to us design which Councilman Lamerson calls frou-frou, but we all loved it. It was the design for Larkin Street with landscaping and sidewalks, and it is indeed a beautiful amenity for Prescott. I think we should have more of those. But one thing we need to understand as a council is that we did agree that it is worth spending more money to get the job done right from the bottom up. If the sewer line that we have cameraed is broken and the sewage is leaking and sewage is backing up into people's homes, we need to go all the way down to the bottom and replace that line. And if the water line is old, do the whole reconstruction. Sidewalks are an important part of living downtown, of having a walkable, livable community, and that's a value that's in our general plan. So all we're talking about here is following through on the commitments of policy that the council has made. One thing I've noticed in my 4 years on the council is that with these big new developments that come along, they tend to drive our capital improvements budget. And make no mistake, don't kid yourself, the taxpayers are paying for those big new developments and the infrastructure that has to connect to the streets within the development. That costs us money. I don't think we would have needed a roundabout when we did if it weren't for the development going on to the east of Highway 89. I don't think we would have needed to move the Deep Well Ranch Road if it were not for the development plans of the Deep Well Ranch. I don't think we would have needed an interchange at Granite Dells Parkway if it were not for the development plans of Granite Dells Ranch. Those things drive our capital improvement budget. That means the money that we have gets pushed to the top for the developers. The rest of the city has to wait in line. And the old part of downtown is falling apart. And I love your idea of going out and looking at it. Try walking on it. Try pushing a baby stroller or riding a bike on it. Goodwin is a bike route. It's ridiculous how dangerous it is. I walk this area a lot. And I know there are a lot of neighbors here who do the same, and they would very much like the opportunity to talk to the council about their personal experiences with sewer backups, sidewalks being a liability, how long they've waited, and that sort of thing. So the problem, to me, Henry, is a lot more complicated than what we're talking about, really. I think the finger's being pointed at you for these delays. There are a number of reasons. There are a lot of reasons why they were delayed. It's not just not getting the job done. We're seeing a lot of new developments come before the council, and I don't know how your staff can possibly competently and professionally review the engineering designs of those developments. I don't know how our building inspection staff can possibly inspect all those homes that are coming at us like a furious windstorm. We need more staff to do it. But the taxpayers shouldn't be paying for additional staff to benefit new development. We should have a fee system which charges the developers for the extra services that are required to serve their development. So I'm looking for a new policy from this council on that.
We already have those fees in place.
They don't cover the additional costs.
I don't know that.
Well, we need to relook at our fees again.
And
We just
again, I appreciate part of what you're saying.
So this is your turn?
Well, yeah, I'll take it my turn, because real quick, because it falls with what she said. But I think some of that's over-exaggerated. I think a lot of the stuff that is coming for new development is going to come, it's called long-range planning. That's why we have a general plan. That's why we have a specific plan. We have to plan for that as well. That's why we put in place 15 years ago when I was first on council, the sidewalk replacement, where there was no sidewalks. We can do that at a different phase in time. But to come out and say we need to do these fees, I've been complaining, as you know, sitting here saying we need a police and fire fee, but we're constrained by law not to have one of those. So there's a lot of things by law we cannot do, but I think with our small bucket of money, we could take the $3 million set aside for open space and put it into roads. That's where we can get this job done. No. Well, okay, let's flip a coin and decide what we want to do then.
Councilwoman Orr.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Gene, actually, the citizens do support. I mean, they passed a 1-cent sales tax for our streets, so, you know, they do expect us to take care of streets. In talking with residents on Washington, you know, raw sewage is a problem. I mean, they've had issues there. So I know it's not just the street. There's more that needs to be done there. And I think a lot of this is process. I remember, and I know Steve was at this meeting, we went to a meeting last March 23rd, and it was at YEI, and remember Steve, and it was for the North Washington and what Churchill, to look at the plan there. And people were thinking, boy, we got to pack up now and get going and, you know, get this, because this is going to happen today. And I remember you were saying, no, it's a year from now we'll be doing this. So that was, where are they now? I guess that's my question. Where is North Washington and Churchill? You're saying they're 1 year, so where's the design on that? What's the percentage?
I'll refer to Mr. Oros on the design.
It's almost like we need to look at each one of these and say, where's the design? Sure. Where are we? Are we going to be able to get it done or not? And what can we tell our citizens?
Sure. The North Washington project is about 90% design right now.
All right.
And at the public meeting we had back in, I think it was March of this year, 23rd, as you
March
mentioned.
23rd.
We did mention that it was going to be about a year delayed. At that time, we were looking at going to construction this fiscal year, but as Henry mentioned, due to the budget constraints and trying to balance each year's funding by fund, we had to stretch out projects that were higher priority or further along in the design process to get those done and deliver those first. So North Washington's about 90% ready to go, and we have been working with the finance department to see if we do deliver the projects that we've said as early as possible, which is the next 1 to 2 years after this fiscal year, how do the fund balances work, and can we deliver that? And finance can address how to find the money. We're looking at the program having a limitation of dollars in addition to each fiscal year. And that's what drove us this year to move some projects out. We didn't really want to, because we have been working on them, trying to deliver them, meeting with the public, addressing their concerns and things. So we have been moving projects forward. Penn Eastwood, same thing. It's about 90% complete, ready to go to construction and out to bid in a few months. Carlton Larkin, as Henry mentioned, that's being delivered through the CMAR project, which we're out to qualifications on. North Washington, we just spoke about. Summit Beach McCormick in the CMAR program as well, and then Goodwin in that same CMAR. But due to the dollars per year, South Washington, which was about 60% design, was further down the list. So we wanted to deliver as much as we could. All the street, if we had unlimited funds, we'd want to deliver them all at the same time. But we also have a constraint with the contracting communities that we can't put out 20 projects at once to get it delivered. There's so much capacity there as well. As Councilwoman Wilcox was discussing, there's only so much capacity and staff. It's the same way with the contracting community. So we need to pace, but we know we need to do all these projects as soon as possible. And with the CMAR is going to help with that. But we also see that we can, if we can move money earlier in the program, we can be right back on track and get these projects delivered.
Councilman Blair.
I just want to address that 3 million open space money. You know, we've been sitting there, and that I know of, there's not one project in the stream for open space purchases. We've talked about how we can move money within accounts. You can move that open space money, not take it away, borrow it, get this road project done. We have never, on this council since I've been here, ever precluded buying any open space that was beneficial for this community. We have never turned one down. Prior to there being an open space fund, we bought property on the side of Thumb Butte because it was important to this community without having an open space fund. I'm simply saying, what's the most important thing to do at this time on this council? We have $3 million sitting in a bank account with no projects in line. If it's that important to get this one done, let's move some money, borrow, and pay it back. That's simple.
Mayor, can I make a
Yeah,
suggestion, if you'd be okay with that? And if council's comfortable with this. We have a lot of projects that are now in this RFQ for CMAR. And we have a couple projects that aren't, that have been committed and promised and are now either off the list or been delayed. I would suggest that even with the RFQ on the street, you guys physically get out, we go look at these projects, we look at what the total amount of money we have, and then you decide which of these you're going to do and which you're not.
Well, I think one of the things I want to say is maybe we ought to hold up on the RFP until we take a look
And make
and
a
whether or
call.
not we want to do these streets now, and if we do, because I think if we promise these people, you know, very emphatically that things are going to happen
That
and
has
don't
to-
do anything on your property because all this
Yes.
work is going to occur, and now we got them 6 years later
There's-
saying we're going to come
you
around.
can't do that to people.
I mean, that's unconscionable in my mind. So I think these projects need to move up. Yeah, I think we need to take a look at them. Do we really need to have, you know, $5 million worth of work or $3 million? I don't know. I think we need to look at that. Because if they're going to be added to CMAR, the last thing we want to do is put out an RFP we're going to have to pull back.
You're exactly right.
So, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Number one, I thought we agreed to do something with the open space money and that it's all been set aside for a particular purchase. Now, moving on, but beyond that, I also thought that we have the ability, if the capacity of your employees is being taxed beyond their ability to handle the engineering inspections and all that other stuff, we can always go to the private sector and pay to have it done.
Well, you're right, Mr. Lemon, especially with the CMAR, because part of the CMAR concept is the design can be done by the private sector.
Well, and that's right. So, I mean, at some level, you know, your job's to manage. Our job is to give you direction. Their job is to do what you tell them to do, okay? I don't think I've missed anything here. So what we're discussing is there's an issue, we need to fix it. I agree with you, Mr. Manager. We need to go out as a council and prioritize what we want done and get it done.
Councilman Shiska.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael, how much of that $120 million reserve fund balance that was so controversial in the 443 discussion, how much of that is committed to streets and roads?
Streets, roads, and you have to also factor utilities, because a lot of these projects have a utility element. The lion's share of the money, is that correct, Mark? The lion's share of that money is in the enterprise fund or the streets account.
And so we've got 14 million coming in each year from, approximately 14 million from that 1 cent tax for roads. So if a majority of the 120 million plus the 14 million and we can't get things done, we don't have money.
I understand where you are and concur that I don't want money to be an excuse. And if we needed, even in instances where we were short in the streets, to get short-term financing to fulfill commitments we made to people, then I think that that's something you need to do. I mean, Mark, do you have any concern from a financial perspective that a lot of this can't be fast-tracked?
As Steve mentioned, we have been working with engineering to come up with a way to get these projects moved up in the capital plan. Just to throw this up, because I'm an accountant and we do numbers. This is the revenues in the streets fund. As you can see, 4.8 million this year from the streets tax, estimated 5.5. This is the revised capital, moving those projects up. We have the capital, 19 million this year, 23 million next year, 16 million, and so on. As you can see, the next 3 years are very heavy in the capital. Again, this is more, the 19 to 23 are more commitments. Obviously, the bottom line here, at the bottom you see the fund balance does go negative during the 5-year period. Again, that all deals with the timing of these projects. Even though we put out a project in 20, do we pay for it all in 20, or does it flow to the other years? This is that area that we'd have to look at short-term financing, which for a year or two to make this work out to get council's goals done is not a big deal. To answer the other question came up, of the 123 million fund balance, about 75 million of that is reserved for capital projects. 20 of that is in the streets fund.
What's in the utilities?
The rest, 55.
In public.
Is in utilities.
In utilities, primarily, yeah, primarily water. With that, be glad to answer any other questions the council may have. I mean, we can.
Yes, not. Councilwoman Wilcox.
I wanted to respond to Councilman Blair's position on using open space money. You know darn well that there are projects in the queue to acquire open space, land, easements, other elements of open space, and we have talked many, many times about the importance of open space to the economy of Prescott. We cannot and should not move that $3.8 million. I think it's a lot less than it should be, but it is based on a list of projects which Joe Baines brought to the council, a wish list, if you will, but it's part of our open space plan that was adopted by the council in 2009. And we need to complete that plan. We can figure out from our reserve money how to do these streets projects without raiding the open space money and further damaging our economy.
Okay, I don't have any more questions, comments from the council, so we'll take public comment. Try and keep it short so we can get as many people as possible. Try to go about 15, 20 minutes on public comment, and then we'll move on to our next subject. Who wants to come on up?
I have some pictures also, so I'm going to ask some assistance here.
Please state your name and where you live.
My name is Sandra Halderson. I live on South Washington Avenue, a historical downtown district.
Thank you.
We all love our neighborhood. There's a lot of pride in ownership here. Many families have been renovating their homes, and in my case, I recently built a new house there. In April of 2016, the city invited our neighborhood to a meeting at the police department to hear about the proposed changes to start in the summer of 2016. Please see your packets. I think all of the invitations are in there. There are minutes to that meeting as well. They would replace the water and sewer lines, even the lines to our houses. They would put in new curbs, sidewalks, and streets. About 36 neighbors attended their meeting. City employees laid out plans to show how the streets would look. One neighbor submitted a written suggestion and ended with, "I'm so happy this is finally being done. Thank you." in,
She's not ready for it
yes,
yet.
if you could.
Okay, sidewalk?
We were all very enthusiastic. As you can imagine, the sewer lines, water lines, sidewalks, and streets are ancient. One sidewalk has a 1937 WPA stamp on it. Other parts of the street may be older than that. Neighbors held off any sewer or sidewalk improvements as they were advised, since the city would be replacing everything. Summer came and went. No news from the city. Then fall, then winter, then spring, then summer again, and no word from the city. Now more than a year has passed since the renovation was promised to start. In the meantime, in my new house, on at least 3 separate occasions, water shot up from my toilets. The city was clearing the sewer lines. Raw sewage spilled from my neighbor's pipe onto my front yard. This is a huge public health hazard. When I met with the city manager last month, I was dumbfounded to learn that our project, which was promised for the summer of 2016, was completely off the schedule. Last week, we had a neighborhood meeting. Until then, most neighbors did not know that the city had reneged on the promise. There's a lot of concern. Who is responsible if someone trips on our sidewalk? Perhaps the city attorney can tell us that. The city plan states completion of this project will result in a reduction in overall maintenance and operational expenses due to the improved condition of the transportation and utility systems. The roadway surface has deteriorated with age and reconstruction is required. End of quote from the city plan. I also didn't quite understand jumping from 3 million plus to 6 million for the drainage. Maybe that could be explained. Perhaps our project just got lost. It was planned and originally scheduled way ahead of the ones that are now scheduled to be done. We are presenting a petition requesting that our project not only be included, but be put on the top of the list. I also want to add that in collecting this information, all city staff were very helpful and cordial. Others are here from our neighborhood, and they'll add their thoughts and concerns. Thank you very much.
I have a question now. Were you told not to do anything adjacent to your property because there was going to be work done?
Yeah.
And so you've held off on doing things that were probably...
That's why you can see the sidewalks. Can you imagine? There's a man who's blind who walks the neighborhood. He's going to trip on that. Anybody in the dark walking on the streets is going to trip on that. And we as neighbors don't think we should be liable. So if we're not, then who is?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
City Manager, the sidewalks, city right-of-way?
They're city right-of-way, but I would defer to the city attorney to talk about requirements for maintenance and checking things out.
Mayor, Council, hate to answer this way, but it's complicated and it depends. Our city code mandates that the adjacent property owner is responsible for the maintenance and some level of repair of the sidewalk. About 4 years ago, the then council decided that it would allocate every year up to about, I think, $250,000 for sidewalk replacement or major repair when you know, that was the repair was necessitated primarily by trees or roots lifting up the panels, or if it was just a complete reconstruction I think the council at the time felt that that was sort of an overburden on the adjoining property owners. So property owners are still responsible for maintaining, cleaning the sidewalks, snow removal, removing sort of obstructions and gravel and those kinds of things in front of their property. The council has the option every year to appropriate that $250,000 at least to do sidewalk repair work. And as you know, every year there is that sidewalk improvement project that gets approved. And I think historically it sort of emanated from around the courthouse square and it's moving outwards. I don't know if this sidewalk work doesn't seem like this was part of that specific sidewalk improvement project. So it's at the bottom line it comes to is it is a budgeting appropriation sort of decision as to where you're going to prioritize the money to do sidewalks. Again, the sort of historical prioritization has been from the downtown around the courthouse square out. Certainly other street projects could include sidewalks that aren't part of that sidewalk repair, that specific sidewalk repair project. As you kind of saw up there, was like $250,000 a year. So it really is, again, it's really a budgeting decision. If the council determines that this street needs work, or that the sidewalks need work but the street doesn't, or if the sewer line needs repair but the water lines don't, and the project is simply patch the trench after you replace the sewer lines and then redo those specific spots where the sidewalk presents the sort of greatest hazard, that becomes a budgeting appropriation decision. Beyond that, I will tell you the liability of the city is limited. In fact, for the most part, the city has what's called immunity when it makes budgeting decisions and decides it's going to spend the money on this public works project and not that public works project. So I don't think that your decision should be, I don't think that the liability tail should wag the project dog. I think you need to make those budgeting decisions based on Michael was suggesting you go out and sort of with your report, I guess your report card or scorecard, and you all, as part of this tour, decide how you're going to prioritize projects based on, your sort of policy views on how these public works projects should happen. But I don't think liability really is a major factor, to be honest with you. To the extent that, and let me just say this, because it was mentioned, Prescott has probably one of the best sewer line maintenance programs in the state. And that was established out of a case we did where we had an expert witness come up and actually testify to that in defense of a sewer line backup. So we've got a very top-notch sewer line maintenance program in terms of clearing out, debris from the sewer mains that, to prevent backup. So it's important to note that to the extent that if there are lateral lines that go from the main to the house, that's the homeowner's line. They own that line. The city owns and is responsible for maintaining the main, but the lateral lines are really the responsibility of the property owner. So if those lines are somehow backing up, then those are not in the city's maintenance responsibility.
Okay, thanks. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. This sort of is reminiscent of another time frame in history before most of you here in the dais were here, except for Mr. Blair. And city tree roots went into a private school, which caused a problem with sewage all over the walls in the school, damaging drywall. There was an issue, if we can go back one or two pictures here, on a sidewalk where you've got a big ridge where the thing is separating. We had an issue right out here in front of City Hall where a lady's customer, the lady happened to own a hairdresser shop over here, tripped and fell on a sidewalk, where that, you had it right there, very similar to that, where the city's tree root damaged a sidewalk, and they told the city, in its infinite wisdom, told the hairdresser that it was her responsibility to fix the sidewalk. And we showed up one day with somebody to cut down the historic tree that's parked out here. And we're told, oh, you can't cut that tree down because that's a historic tree. Well, yeah, but your historic tree damaged this woman's sidewalk that she's culpable for by city code. And this whole thing is by code. And John knows, John, I have some problems with some of the codes. Yeah. So, this just brings to point some of what's going on, and it's really not righteous in some of the way we handle things. At the end of the day, we didn't cut the tree down, but the city did fix the sidewalk, and the private property owner wasn't held accountable because the city tree damaged the sidewalk that they wanted to make her pay for. Sometimes common sense has to come into play on some of these issues. When you take a look at some of these things, it's just like, I've never been a big open space fanatic because I think we got lots of open space. But on the other hand, the citizens did set money aside, and we as a council made a decision to set what was less than that bucket aside for a particular thing. We did that. And don't rob that now. Just leave it alone, move on, that'll happen. If we need to fix the roads and we need to fix the sidewalks all out in town, we have a permanent revenue source to do that. What we have to do is leverage how we use the money and prioritize what needs to be done first. And, I didn't mean to sound, like Gene was saying, foo-foo, but sometimes you've got to put the public health and safety ahead of what's pretty. You've just got to take care of what's got to be taken care of first. And as time goes on, we can come back and make it pretty. We don't always have to have it pretty right to start, but we do have to have it safe. I guess that's my point.
Councilman Shiska. Thank you, Mayor. So, John, whose responsibility to fix this heaved sidewalk is it?
Well, the way we amended the code, again, this is about four years ago, this would be part of the city's, or could be part of the city's sidewalk repair program.
That's why we came up with that, because of that instant. And I remember that, and I remember the numbers.
And I don't know if, without sort of backing out of the picture, whether it's the tree in the background that's lifting it up or there's an adjacent tree. But this is sort of the classic example of a tree root lifting up the panel. So, as far as sort of responsibility, for this level of work, even though it's the owner, it's the owner could, as the adjacent property owner, replace this panel. Generally speaking, it's the city. The city would go in and do this either as part of that budgeted $250,000 a year that by under the ordinance, where the council can appropriate up to $250,000, or as part of a larger street project like this Washington project you're talking about.
Sure.
So you're not. I mean, just to be clear, the city is not limited to that up to $250,000 a year to do sidewalk repair. That's a separate sort of. It's almost like pavement preservation. That's a separate sort of project.
Sure.
When we do other streets, a Larkin, for instance, the sidewalks are reconfigured.
Oh, yeah. I can't believe we've let this stand. I absolutely cannot believe that exists in the city of Prescott. The truth of the matter is what is right. It's not who's got the liability. It's what's right. We're community until we're not. And so, we need to really take a look at this stuff. I took a fall over by the hut. Not that I was in the hut, but I took a fall over by the hut, and I hadn't been in the hut. And really ripped my hand up. And the truth is that shouldn't happen. And it's not whose fault is it, because it was my fault. But the truth of the matter is that that shouldn't be anywhere in the city of Prescott.
And again, I think, you know, in talking about this discussion and on a larger scale, it really comes down to, you know, some measurement of how you're going to prioritize projects. What's the measurement by which projects are prioritized? I know that we had discussions in the past on capital projects about sort of a scoring system where streets that had either the lowest score or highest score, or a grading system, were prioritized to the top, and that was sort of talked about. That's the rationale behind why this project was number 1 and this was number 6, because there was a, you know, however it was scored. A lot of it's based on, you know, the service level of the street. A lot of it's based on how much, you know, where you know, you spend $1 million on 2 blocks of street here or there. You know, a lot of it's I think the decision making is, well, how, you know, what's the greatest benefit for that $1 million of project? Is it sort of a remote street, or is it a busy street? So there's a scoring process by which you go through, and certainly, like I said, with the sidewalk repair project, it just sort of, it's geographic. I think if you recall, out in front of the Charlotte Hall Museum, I mean, this is minor league compared to what that used to look like. But again, that's how those projects were prioritized as part of that $250,000 budget. But without a doubt, I want to make clear, I agree with you that the liability question is really sort of the bottom question. It's how you're going to prioritize that based on what you see as the greatest need and the greatest benefit to the most people when you spend that dollar or that $5 million.
Thank you.
Councilman Blair.
I'm only going to bring it up because we were talking about foo-foo. But when you start talking about these street projects like a Larkin, you know, when you go downtown Prescott, Arizona, we did a street project down there, and we put in these beautiful trees. Okay? Now if you go down there, count 12 different spaces where the trees have died, and we've capped them with metal because we don't have enough money to replace the trees that have died. So I have complained about open space maintenance. I've complained about the maintenance, all this foo-foo stuff. At what point in time are we going to put money in the budget to take care of that stuff? And that's just something that's an ongoing struggle, an ongoing thing we need to talk about. Those beautiful trees in downtown is part of the ambiance that we have. And you walk in front of El Charro, in front of Whiskey Row, and if they die, they put a metal plate on top of them and move on. And that's not righteous either.
I'll take a couple more comments from the public.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. I've appeared before you many times on the same subject, and Sandra did a very good job covering the basics of our street. I want to cover the overview. I want to also tell you, having been part of the community here for many times speaking about economic development, I want to paint a picture for you of how economically viable this street renovation would be in the bigger scope. We are under heavy renovation here. We had, you know, just 2 years ago, we probably had 5 different sober living homes, you know, dilapidated houses in our neighborhood. We've had people that are here, right here now in this audience, that have put hundreds of thousands of dollars into their home. That has not only raised the level of tax base for these people that are on the street, these are contributors to our society down here. They buy things, they buy cars, they go to our restaurants, they pay taxes. The property values have been elevated. This is a very important part of that street and the renovation. It's not only that street, it's Goodwin. Now I want to speak about Goodwin in particular. Goodwin is a highway, if you will, for those kids coming from Skyview. I've been saying for years, we have to have sidewalks for those kids. There's a point coming over when you're heading down Goodwin towards the square, you come over Washington, there's a blind spot there for a few seconds where you cannot see what is on the other side. It took me 6 months to get little plaques, little signs from the city put up there that says cross traffic does not stop. When you're coming down that grade of Washington and you're approaching Goodwin, people come down that very, very quickly. There's a point there where you cannot see who's on the other side of that when you go to turn on the left. Now we have another problem. We've got kids that have discovered it's a great skateboarding hill. Yeah. And they don't stop. They can't stop. We're going to have an accident there someday. It's going to be a bad accident. But we really, really have got to address the sidewalk issue. the economic development. And then I also wanted to say one thing to our attorney Palladini about the maintenance. And you're right, we probably do have a really great maintenance for the sewer budget. But here's the problem. At what point does the maintenance overtake the cost of just replacing that line? 4 years ago, I had the city come out and actually camera that line. They scoped that line halfway up Washington. It is clay. It's broken in. The tree roots have taken over. They're on our street all the time. That's got to cost us money. I mean, at what point do you say enough is enough and just replace the line? I don't know when that, I've heard from Jim Storm, who's been on that street for 70-something years, that line hasn't been replaced in 65 years. So I know when I did my addition and I went to do my sewer tap from my new plumbing into the old, we had to cut it back 3 feet to get a piece of clay that we could put a hub on without it cracking apart. I still have to have my sewer lines cleaned out bi-monthly just to keep that connection going. So it's costing us all a lot of money. That's $300 every time he comes out. So there's a lot of other costs that we just have to pull the trigger on this and get it done. Then I have one more quick question. What about that money? Does all that money have to come, and this is more of a clarification question, does all of that money for the underground and the roads come out of the streets budget? Why can't we do the underground utility that comes out of sewer and water budget?
It does.
Okay, so the $6 million is not all coming out of streets.
No,
it's separated out.
It's taken out of the surface. Mark can probably answer this, but the surface money comes out of street tax.
Okay.
Water lines come out of water fund. Sewer lines come out of sewer fund. And again, I'm not saying that. I'm not disagreeing with this concept. It's just, there are, at some point, this council and staff make this prioritization, and projects get done, and some projects don't get done, and that becomes a decision because you can't do all the projects all at once.
Well, this street needs to be prioritized because this is part of our economic development in the downtown area. We are 1 block away from Mount Vernon. And this is a very important part of our regentrification for the downtown area. This should be a big priority on streets. Also, Henry Hash had the budget, or maybe it was Mark, that said the budget was 86% called for. Where's the extra 14%? And how much is that? Could we allocate that 14% towards our street project?
It was Henry's slide, but
okay.
Obviously part of the sheet that I put up was Public Works moving those projects forward. So they have looked at rearranging that.
Just out of curiosity, what is the 14%? What's the value of it?
I don't know what it's in yours.
Well, total is 14% of the $62 or $3 million we had. We don't have a target to deliver for the 14% because we are still working on the engineering and the design. We are not saying they're not going to get done. They will get done, we just don't have it. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'm actually very glad to hear all these comments. And thank you because, we need direction from you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And of course, we will follow the direction. Our job as professionals is to come to you, give you our best professional judgment. We are not building Cadillacs or foo-foos, and we were told earlier today that do we need to replace sewer line or water line? And I'm glad that Ms. Ken tell me and others say, she just explained quite well the conditions of our sewer line. So the direction from this council has been to do it right, do it once. This is the direction we want. Which one is it? We can't have it both ways. We are working with Mr. Woodfield and Lars, try to see if we can really be creative, come up with money, maybe borrow internally to bring these projects up. I don't disagree with anything being said by everyone in here. Those roads are quite bad. They have been in this condition for a very, very long time, 50 years prior to my arrival in here. We are doing our best, and I think the fact that I presented to you by the end of this fiscal year, we believe we're going to deliver some 88% of the projects, if all goes well. That is pretty amazing. Usually we come up with 20, 30, 40%. But road projects, any projects, they're not like something you fix your car, come and pick it up tomorrow. We design, and we design some more. We meet with people. We have property acquisition and the construction. So it takes 2 years generally is the average. When you go to ADOT, it's more like 3 or 4 years. We try to do that. We'll be glad to do whatever you would like us to do, but just we need one clear direction.
Mr. Hash, for the record, I was here when City Council did direct you to prioritize the downtown area.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll take one more comment.
Mayor, Council, good afternoon. My name is Sandra Smith, 701 Whites Bar. Those sidewalks, that's not the only place they're like that. They're all over town like that. For anybody using any kind of alternative mobility, whether it's a walker, cranes, crutches, they are a disaster. They are just a disaster. And they need somebody to do something with them. I don't know who, I don't know what, but something.
Make it short.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, concerned citizens, my name is Happy Oasis. I appreciate the accountability of Councilor Orr, Councilor Lamerson, and Councilor Wilcox regarding open space's fiscal responsibility, especially the wisdom of Councilor Wilcox. In contrast, Mr. Blair advising that open space funds be used for road projects is not wise. It is also, as Mr. Lamerson said, stealing to rob and not recognize the importance of open space and keep the funds where they have been allocated. Can a road generate the oxygen required to sustain life, Mr. Blair? Should we take money from the roads fund and transfer it to open space? Yes, it sounds ridiculous to suggest that, but perhaps transferring money from open space to roads really is ridiculous. Is oxygen foo-foo, Councilman Blair? There are numerous open space projects that are under serious consideration. However, arguably the most essential of all, the heart and soul of Prescott, is an open space project that has yet to be extensively discussed. The Peavine Trail in the basin of the Granite Dells, the focal point of Prescott's tourism. Arizona Eco Development's CEO has suggested that a swap for the Granite Dells Basin is a possibility, though it should not be for, I have one last sentence.
Well, make it quick, because you're on another subject. We're talking
Though
about
it should
streets,
not
so.
be for any water ever an ever more precious commodity, or for an extension of the airport runway, a pie-in-the-sky project that has no basis in reality and is a waste of taxpayers' money.
Okay, thank you. Now, I got to move on. We've already got an hour and a half, well,
Mayor,
hour and 15 on this.
Mayor, can I just make a quick statement? I'd just like to thank Sandra for reaching out and coming to me about this, some of this, and meeting with her constituents. I mean, I think this is an example of a neighborhood coming forward, and I appreciate their proactive side of that.
Councilman Blair, do you have one quick comment?
Yeah, I didn't say take away the open space money. I said just reprioritize it.
Yeah,
that money's been sitting there since 2007, going 9-10 years, and we haven't used it. We can borrow it for 2 or 3 years and pay it back.
Okay.
So I didn't say take it away. So I wish people would listen.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, you got one last comment?
Yeah, I don't remember using quite the way that it was represented, but that's okay. I was going to support Mr. Blair. Fact of the matter is, he didn't say do this, that, and the other thing. What he did say was one thing, and if my memory serves me correctly, we reserved what money we had left for one very specific thing. We've already done it. I lost the vote, by the way. I didn't support it. And I lost 6-1, and we as a council agreed to reserve that money for one particular thing. And there it is. It's in the deal. Leave it there to use it what it was intended to be used for, and then we'll come up with the other stuff from another revenue source.
Okay. I think basically I have consensus of the council to take a look at Penn and Washington and determine whether or not we're going to add them to the CMR. Is that basically correct?
Not the CMR, but to
Just
move
to
them
move
up on priority
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, possibly add them to the CMR too.
But yes, Goodwin and Washington.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
Washington
meant
and Penn.
the cross street also, yeah. Do I have a consensus? Okay. City manager's not here, but I guess you understood what we said, so. All right, thank you, everybody, and we'll move on to our last topic.
Item B, discussion on creating a city traffic committee.
They're making a copy.
City manager, we're on
I apologize.
B.
Mr. Mayor, I know you had or expressed to me interest in the idea of revisiting a traffic committee. My understanding from you and some of the other members of council and staff was that we had a traffic committee maybe up till 2011. I think that's about the time frame. And at the time that we hired a traffic engineer, I guess the decision was to disband the traffic committee, figuring that we had a lot of staff input about traffic issues. And you shared with me that you've had a number of constituents come to you with specific traffic concerns. And I think your idea, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that it might be valuable to solicit some citizen input on a standing committee going forward. A mayor committee would only last the length of your term, so at this point it's fairly late in the game for you to establish a mayor's committee. So what you would need would be to get the support of council to go ahead and reconstitute the traffic committee as a standing committee.
Well, I'll say that I think most have seen a lot of the letters, emails that have come in talking about their concern for increased traffic, and I know since I got back here in 2007, I've seen a fairly significant increase also. And I think, I've heard people comment, can't we time the lights better? What can we do to improve traffic in a certain area of town? And a number of people have said, why don't you have a traffic committee looking at that? I looked at possibly doing a mayor's ad hoc committee, but again, that would only be for the 2 months that I have remaining in my term. So don't know if the future mayor, whoever that is, would want to continue with that, or it's best to make it a standing committee. So I agreed with the city manager to bring it up here and talk about establishing a standing traffic committee, which would also probably incorporate the bike committee and pedestrian also, because if we're going to look at traffic, we're going to look at streets, we need to look at the whole picture. So, Councilwoman Wilcox.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that traffic and bicycle safety concerns go hand in hand, and they should be addressed by one committee. I would really like to see the ad hoc committee become a standing committee. I think it would use less staff time if we had a combined committee to address all these concerns. I am concerned about using up more staff time for a second committee, so if we could combine them, I think that would make sense.
Councilwoman Orr.
Yes. So Mayor and Jean, I agree. I'm the liaison for the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. Sandra sits on it. George is there for every meeting. We meet every third Thursday at 10 o'clock until noon, and or 11:30. It's a great committee, and we do address a lot of traffic issues, in addition to bicycle, pedestrian, because we're all traveling. They're all means of transportation, and so. And I do know it was our desire, the committee's desire, to actually present to the council in November, and then to talk about, is it possible that we could make this a standing committee? So I know that was on our calendar to look at getting on the agenda. And Bill Finelli has led that group. And so we talk also about, transportation. So it's really a great committee. I think they've done a lot. Ian Madeline meets with us every time, and we have Teresa that joins us. So I would say let's look at how you might use that group and maybe add to that group maybe a little bit more focus on traffic. But rather than create a second one, I definitely wouldn't go there, but use this group. It's and we probably have about 8 people just from the public that attend every time, so we were looking about how we might be able to expand. So it seems to me that the two work together really well, rather than be redundant.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Shiska.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate that. You know, I think it comes down to this. A traffic engineer would look at it and say, can we, let's say at Robinson Drive, turning on to Gurley, can we turn left there? And according to the traffic engineers, yes, we can turn left there from a traffic engineer's standpoint. What the public could answer was, should we be turning left there? And in the Robinson Drive situation, Councilwoman Orr and I looked at it, as well as Chief Black and Michael Lamar, our city manager, and basically said, should we be turning left there? And we all came to the conclusion, no. So I think that a citizens committee looking at those kind of things could look at things from a citizen standpoint. And I think that we could much better look at traffic flow in this city if in fact we did it from that standpoint.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Here again, you know, the taxpayers and the citizens of the community do have some influence over our roads and our ways of life in this community still. And if I'm not mistaken, the general plan that was overwhelmingly voted on by the citizens of this community mentions multimodal, and which infers a lot of different things. It's not just limited to cars. And I see no problem with having a Citizens Advisory Committee with regards to traffic and pedestrian and bicycles and everything else. I mean, that's part of the general plan. So I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from the council? Any from the public?
Mayor, Council, Sandra Smith, good afternoon. As Billy pointed out very clearly, we address these issues in our committee. We address not just bicycles, not just pedestrians, but how to interface them, how to bring them together safely for everybody, move the traffic and the things more smoothly, get things connected so you can keep bicycles and pedestrians and cars from intersecting in ways that we don't want them to intersect, like those nasty accident things. So this is a function that we've been doing with the city engineer, with Ian, right along. It would be only natural to add that as a further feature to that group, it seems to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I got a question for Sandra. Since I don't particularly go to your committee meetings, you know, I would hope that you also, from a mobility challenged individual to another mobility challenged individual, take into consideration some of the hazardous nature of what multimodal means in a community where you see sidewalks like what we just looked at for somebody that has trouble ingressing in whatever sidewalks and stuff when you've got those hazards out there planted. So I think it's imperative that we have citizen input, since I've heard from staff, they're very challenged with the amount of work they have. So, you know, we can help them.
Yeah, we do. One of the things that we brought up, or that I brought up, was that many of the alleyways are so blind. When you come up to them, you can't see what's coming out of the alleyway till you're into it, especially in the immediate downtown area. So we're looking at ways to enhance driver awareness as well as pedestrian awareness. You know, look out, there's cars coming through there. But also cars, watch out, there's people walking there.
Yeah, you know, I got lambasted here about a week or two ago for my flippant attitude, but shame on you for being a good citizen and participating.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the Public? Okay, I think I got a consensus to probably take the current bicycle ad hoc committee and take a look at adding some traffic folks to it. Obviously, we want our traffic engineer on there, possibly a SIMPO person. Or do we have some?
Well, actually, Ian is the TAC representative for SIMPO, and I'm on
okay.
SIMPO, so it kind of all works.
So you want to go, city manager, you want to put together a standing committee that we can vote on?
We'll do that. We'll take the existing membership of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, and maybe if you guys have some individual suggestions of, how many people are on there now, Billy?
I think they're like 7.
What do you think? Maybe 2 people additionally that have more of a traffic focus?
Sure.
We
You
do
guys
have an
have to-
appointment process and an application.
We'll do that.
Yeah. You know, Mayor, if you don't mind, kind of like what we did with formalizing the TAC is what we were hoping that we could maybe do with the
Formalize
Bike and
this.
Pedestrian
Okay.
Committee, was to formalize that.
We'll definitely do that.
Okay.
Okay, there's no further business. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you for coming.